So, today's reflection. Who's a saint? And what do we know about saints? Most people use the word saint to refer to someone who is exceptionally good or holy. In Catholic Church, however, a saint has a special specific meaning, someone who has led a life of heroic virtue. This definition includes the 4 cardinal virtues: prudence, temperance, fortitude, and justice, as well as the theological virtues faith, hope, and charity. A saint displays these qualities in a consistent and exceptional way. The process of being named a saint in the Catholic Church is called canonization. The word canon meaning authoritative list. Persons who are named saints are listed in the canon as saints and given a special day called a feast in the Catholic calendar. Now let us reflect on some of these saints. And as we reflect, we're going to find some very saintly, fun facts about the saints. The first saint is Saint Bonaventure. Now here's a saint who might have had dishpan hands, but if he did, he could have kept the secret under his hat. When the Pope decided to make Bonaventure a cardinal, he sent a delegation to announce the news and to present him with the official red cardinal hat. But when he got to the monastery, they could not find him. But they found Bonaventure in the kitchen. He was busy washing dishes, and he told them to just hang that new hat on a tree until he finished. Bonaventure must have been a very humble man, but he was a learned one. He was known to have one of the great medieval times and was an outstanding theologian, writer, and preacher. He wrote and spoke so beautifully, he became known as the seraphic or angelic man. He was down to earth enough to help with the task that most famous people wouldn't have spent their time doing, something as lowly as washing those dishes. While you wash your dishes or stack your dishes, think of this humble saint and tip your hat to Saint Bonaventure. Well, as you know, in this area, we see many farms, much farmland around there. So this might bring to mind a saintly farmer, the farmer Isidore. Now this Isidore was actually named after the learned Isidore, who wrote the encyclopedia, but they learned and lived very different lives. This Isidore was born to a poor family in Spain, and as soon as he was old enough to go to work, he became a farmer, working for a wealthy man who had an estate outside the city. This was not just Isidore's first job, it was his only job. He worked there on the farm all his life, getting up very early each morning to go to Mass, and then spending the days in the field. Isidore married a girl as poor as he was, and together they lived a saintly Christian life. It is said that Isidore prayed all day as he plowed, and he was so generous to others that, as poor as he was, he gave generously to even poorer. If he had nothing else to give, he would share his meal with them. These two Isidores were very different in their lifestyles, but they were very much alike in their saintlihoods. Now, let's move to a saint that we think of when we're drinking the wine. For those who love wine, we have Saint Eustace. Can you imagine a saint who might be living in a wine cask out in the middle of a field? Well, this is what Saint Eustace did for a while. Saint John was a priest working in Normandy when a terrible plague broke out there. So John volunteered to help care for the sick and the dying. Even though the plague was very contagious and he could catch it himself, it didn't bother him, but he didn't want to take this infection to the other priests in the religious community. When he was not on nursing duty, John would go out and sleep in one of these wine casks. When the plague passed, John returned to the community and was known for many good works, preaching at the parish missions, running seminarians, writing books. As a matter of fact, he wrote his last book when he's 79 years old, and he finished it just 1 month before he died. Have you ever seen a wine cask? It's big enough to hold a man, but hardly enough room to move. Some of the really big ones in France look like huge barrels, because you can imagine what that would be like. If you could be satisfied with very close quarters, you might be like John. John was content to settle for that because he cared for others and more than about himself. Do you know anyone who is unselfish like St. John? Someone who puts others first instead of always thinking, me first, and you last, you last. Maybe you're like St. John, or maybe you could be if you did just that. Now let's move to a woman saint. Here's a fun fact about a saintly woman named Saint Siloam. We don't know a lot about this saint, but what we do know is plenty. She's one of the women mentioned in the New Testament of the Bible. She was the wife of Zebedee and the mother of 2 apostles, James and John. Not only that, Siloam was one of the women who followed Jesus and was standing with Mary at the foot of the cross when Jesus died. All this makes her a very special lady. The little we know about her tells us that she was a good wife and a mother and a faithful follower of Jesus. What else do we need to know? Some saints have done daring deeds, braved torture, fought crusades, or built monasteries and churches. But here's a lady who simply did her best to be a good person. She must have been a good mother to have 2 sons who were chosen by Jesus to be his apostles. And she must have been a very brave woman to not run away when Jesus was crucified, to stay there with him and his mother on that very terrible day. So, you see, a saint can be an ordinary person who loves God and shows it by the way they live their ordinary life every day. That's how one of your friends or relatives could somebody be a saint. That's how you could be a saint too. Now, how about, have you ever been out, especially during the summertime, and maybe still now, and smelled that great smell of somebody barbecuing? Well, this Saint Alexander was called Alexander the Charcoal Burner. Oh my. The saint became a bishop because the people who lived in the town were snooty and sarcastic. Alexander's town needed a new bishop, so the people in charge of finding one selected some candidates and then sent for another bishop, a wise man known as Gregory the Worker, the Wonder Worker, to come and decide which one of these be right for the job. Gregory came and he talked to all the candidates, but none of these seemed to be the right one. So the townspeople wanted him to choose someone rich and influential, but this did not satisfy anyone. So Gregory decided to send out one of the townspeople, and he said to Alexander sarcastically, "Come here." "Well, then, why don't you pick Alexander the Charcoal Burner?" they said. Gregory knew this was a smart alecky suggestion, but this surprised them all by sending for Alexander. With Alexander by his side, he saw the clothes that were all dirty and ragged because of Alexander's work he did, and he certainly didn't look like a bishop at all. But Gregory began to talk to him, and he found that Alexander was truly a well-educated and a very wise man. He learned that Alexander had given away all his money and taken a lowly job. He could live a simple life like Jesus just by doing this charcoaling. Gregory knew that he had found the right man to be the bishop. What began to be a joke ended joyfully. The charcoal burner became a good and holy bishop, a helpful teacher, and he was known as Alexander, Saint Alexander, Saint Alexander the charcoal burner. Does your family or anyone in your neighborhood use that charcoal burner to barbecue? Next time you smell it, smell that barbecue and charcoaling hamburger, think of Alexander the saint, who chose to take a lowly job, but was then chosen to be a leader. Well, we're going to finish with one last saint, Martin de Porres. This saint is very special because he tried to help all of God's lonely ones, orphans and slaves and poor and the sick, and even stray cats and dogs. Martin was born in Lima, Peru. His father was a Spanish knight and his mother was a black freed woman from Panama. When Martin was only 12 years old, he became an apprentice to a barber surgeon. Now at that time, barbers did not just give a haircut. They also treated the sick and dispensed medicines. So after 3 years, Martin left the work to join the Dominicans, not to become a priest. He wanted to become a brother. So he continued in his work of dispensing medicine to the sick and was put in charge of giving the convent's daily ration of food to the poor. He soon opened an orphanage and a hospital for foundlings, little infants found after they were deserted by their parents. And he also worked a great deal with African slaves who had been brought to this place in ships, visiting them on the docks to comfort them and to give them food and medicine. It is said that Martin helped anyone who needed blankets, shirts, candles, or if they needed miracles or prayers, he helped them. Martin even helped the animals by providing a home for stray cats and dogs at his sister's place. Martin de Porres is a patron saint of interracial justice. Do you know anyone like Martin? Someone who's ready to reach out and lend a helping hand to anyone who needs help anywhere? Maybe that's you. You could be like Martin de Porres. Think about it. We could all be saints. So I say to you, God bless all of you. Have a good day. And remember, you can be a saint.